The first passenger ship granted access to our waters will set sail on its first cruise of the summer next week. The Spirit of Enderby arrived at Lyttelton Harbour this week from Russia after getting permission from the government to enter. It's set for a busy summer of cruises, with New Zealanders filling the gap left by the lack of international tourists. Sally Murphy stepped on board.
It's a hub of activity on the Spirit of Enderby. Crew are doing repairs and preparing the ship for its first passenger voyage next week. It's the first international ship that's graced New Zealand waters after being given an exemption to enter. Heritage Expeditions Director Aaron Russ says the ship will do 9 trips this summer, 3 around Fiordland and Stewart Island, and then the rest to the subantarctic islands next month.
Pretty much the same as a regular season, so we've actually, we've adjusted our schedule because we're only doing a season for New Zealanders this year, and so those Stewart Island and Fiordland voyages are new additions for the New Zealand market. We know Kiwis love to get into that part of the world and explore.
Mr Russ says the 50 guest cruises are about 80% full already.
We're getting close to full. There's still space on most of our voyages if there's Kiwis out there keen to go and discover something completely different. But on the whole, we've been really pleased with the demand from New Zealanders to get out and just explore the furthest reaches of our bubble.
Mr Russ says they had to jump through a few hoops to get an exemption for the ship to sail here. He says the exemption was mostly focused around providing business to the marine industry. At least $50,000 had to be spent on repairs. Mr Russ says he was surprised none of the exemption included the huge impact the cruises will have on the tourism sector, and he thinks that should change.
Given the impacts that COVID's had on the tourism industry, that a consideration should be given to the full range of economic impacts and benefits that having ships sailing in New Zealand waters bring to the country.
The 22 Russian crew completed their mandatory quarantine on the way to New Zealand. They had 2 COVID tests before leaving Russia and another earlier this week before they were allowed to come ashore. One of the country's 2 female marine pilots, Joanne Lang, brought the Spirit of Enderby into Lyttelton's new cruise ship berth. She says it's obviously quieter without having international cruise ships coming in, so bringing in the first one since the border closed was exciting.
I boarded the ship out at the pilot station, which is a couple of miles off the head, and they'd dressed the ship up because it was a big moment for them too. So they had all the flags up and greeted the captain. So we worked together, bringing the ship in, and so it was good. It was great. Really nice to come alongside, nice and slowly alongside the cruise ship terminal. Nobody wants to damage it when it's a brand new wharf.
Miss Lang will be on board for one of the cruises next month.
In the 50s, my father actually spent 2 lots of 1 year down at the Campbell Islands doing the ionosphere readings for the Aviation Authority. So he actually lived there when it was sort of like early days when they still had the sheep on the island. And so I've got all his old photos in his diaries, so it's pretty interesting, pretty exciting for me to actually go where he was, see if I can get photos taken where he had his photos taken.
The Spirit of Enderby will be off next week, bound for Bluff, on its first cruise. In Christchurch for Checkpoint, Sally Murphy.